progress.
Shir HaMailos Tafshin Lamed Daled, that the Rebbe said on Rosh Hashanah, on the second day Rosh Hashanah, but it has to do with what we say throughout the entire Aseret Metshuva, the capital of Shir HaMailos. Shir HaMailos, Mama'kim Karaatich Hashem, it says, it's a song of Mailos, of going up. I called out to you, Hashem, Shezeh Waschos, Hashir, Mama'kim, Sha'im, B'tfil, Shachris, Diyam Alf, the Rosh Hashanah. These 4-5 words is the beginning of the Perek in Tehillim that we say at the Tfil Shachris of the first day of Rosh Hashanah after Yishtabach, La'achri Akdomus Havoid Tfil's Arvis, play after Rosh Hashanah, after first having Ma'ariv on the first night of Rosh Hashanah. Umekolshkin, how much more so that it follows La'achri Havoid of Rosh Hashanah. It follows the Havoid of the day before Rosh Hashanah. So after all of that, now we could say Shir HaMailos Mama'kim. It's known, the question and examination of this, the fact that it says Mama'kim in the plural, Hainu Shnei Amakim. It doesn't say Mi Oimek, it says Mama'kim. Plural. Oimek ve'oimek le'oimek. A depth and then a depth to the depth. Oimek basar oimek, a depth following that depth. Yesh lohaisa b'zeh, we could add to this, Shemalvada diuk Mama'kim lashon rabim, in addition to the fact that it says Mama'kim in the plural, which already indicates a double level of depth. Hine gam haloshen mamok loshen yachid gufa, moira al oimek la oimek, shalachein namar mamok v'loi oimek. Mamok says mi mamakim. It doesn't say mi oimkim. Oimek means an ordinary depth. When it says mamok, even in the singular, that itself indicates already a depth beyond an ordinary depth. And since since it says mi mamakim, so it says mamok, but now mamok in the plural. In this mamok, that is even higher than a normal depth. There's 2 levels. So there's oimek, then there's mamok, and in the level of mamok, there are 2 levels of mamok of depth. We need to understand what is this mamok level that's beyond oimek, that's beyond an ordinary depth. And then further, what are the 2 levels in the mamok itself? Ma'amakim loshen rabim. It says ma'amakim in the plural. That's one question. What are these different levels? What's the mamok level and what's the 2 mamok levels? Now the Rebbe is going to focus on the word karaatich. Specifically, he used the words calling. Calling, the Rebbe is going to say, indicates a very easy thing, a very light thing. Like you turn to someone, you call him, hey, come over. From this expression of calling, it's indicated you don't need some special effort to do it, only like calling, like someone calling his friend, hi, come over here. Seemingly, since we're talking over here about drawing down from a level of mamakim that we just now described, it's ma'amok shalamaylam oimek. First of all, it's a ma'amok that's higher and deeper and greater than depth. And in the mamok itself, it says mamakim in the plural, that there are 2 levels of mamok, and Yisrael, like we mentioned before. Surely there has to be a unique effort put into it. Why does it say that I've called you from the mamakim? Calling is just, you just call like you call your friend. Seemingly a very easy thing. Now the Rebbe is going to say, hold on. Calling, when referred to Hashem, we find is another expression of davening. So don't just say that it's like calling your friend down the street. And to note, last line on the page, Top of page 2, even though calling is one of the 10 expressions of davening that the Medrash enumerates, like what the Rashi brings down, the beginning of Parshas Vayeschanan, that there are 10 expressions in the Torah used for davening. So kriya is one of the terms that's used for davening. So don't poo-poo it. Don't say, kriya is only like calling your friends. How are you applying it by memamakim? So he says, the very fact that we have 10 different expressions for the same thing, especially the way Chassidus looks at everything, it doesn't mean that they're identical. The reason why we have 10 expressions is because each one indicates something else. Like, for example, how do we know about 5 levels of neshama? Because it says the neshama was called Chamisha Shemis Nikrula. It was called by 5 names. Comes Chassidus, comes Kabbalah, and says Hashem doesn't need multiple names for the same thing. The fact that you have 5 names for the neshama, that indicates there's 5 levels. So it's not just nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yichid are all the same thing. Nefesh is one level, yichid is a different level, and they could be poles apart. The same thing, if there are 10 expressions of davening, we need to look at the expressions and see what is the meaning of each expression. So that's what the Rebbe says, the top of the page 2, how they move in the Pashtus itself understood, the very fact that you have 10 different expressions, 10 different words used in the Torah for davening, these are 10 different and distinct levels of davening. Not that all 10 expressions are all referring to the same level of davening. The only difference is what expression, what word you're using. And how do you know this? Like it's also obvious from what the Medrash over there that enumerates about the 10 expressions of davening, he enumerates it concerning what it says in Parshas Vayeschanan that Moshe said, Vayeschanan al Hashem. Of all the 10 expressions, Moshe Rabbeinu chose to use the expression of begging and so, supplication and so on. If all the expressions are the same, why does he have to choose one over the other? Move on from this understood that obviously there are differences. So now let's look at the word kriya. From this is understood the davening, an expression of calling out, indicates such a type of davening that doesn't take a special effort. Like was mentioned before, that the expression calling is like a person calling out to his friend. That, in other words, it's a very easy, low intensity type of, if you will, davening. If so, it's not understood like the Rebbe began the question. What it says, Mamaakim, from the depth I've called you. And as we explained all the different levels that we're referring to over here, seemingly, how is it possible to draw down from this level of Mamaakim only through a level that seems to be such a simple level of davening, such an easy level like just calling? Ois Beis, second page of the Maamar. When we say Mamaakim in the plural, that this indicates the 2 different levels, that the 2 depths are in 2 distinct and different things. That it's not like one piled on top of each other, but they run parallel to each other. There is a depth of A and there is a depth of B, but not that there is a depth and a further depth. He says, brought down the Zohar, Rabbi Yehuda, Pasach, Rabbi Yehuda began that this Shir HaMailas Mamaakim is referring to Tshuva, and over there in the Zohar he continues. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, Rabbi Yitzchak said, the Sov Kame Malcha Ilah, he is returning before the supernal king, Vitzolet Sloisa, and he's davening his prayer, Me'umke Deliba, from the depth of the heart. That's what it says, from the depth I've called out Hashem, meaning the depth of the person's heart. This Machlokes brought down Maamar that Rabbi Yitzchak says the meaning of Mamaakim is referring to the depth of the Yid's heart. That's what it means. I have called you from the depths. I have called you from my depths. That's tshuva. Rab Abba says, Me'amakim krasicha Hashem, from the depth I've called you out, Hashem. Meaning it's where Hashem is being called out from. The depth is referring to Hashem's depth. Asar goniz hu le'ela. There is a concealed place above. V'hu amika debeira, that is the depth of the well. Umahai nafkin nachlin umabuin l'chol ibar. From that depth of the well goes out rivers and other types of tributaries and different types of flows to every side. So that's the machlokes brought down in many Maamar Chassidus between Rab Abba and Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Mamaakim krasicha Hashem is referring to the depth of my heart. I call out Hashem. From the depth of my heart, I've called out Hashem. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, from the depth of Hashem, I've called you out. I've called down from the depth of Hashem. According to these two explanations, we could have explained that the two depths is referring, one is referring to Rabbi Yitzchak's, and one is referring to Rabbi Abba's opinion. They're talking about two separate things. The plural means both. You have the depth of the person, that's one oimek, and you have the depth of Hashem, and that's another oimek. And that's why it says plural. So therefore it's not so intense like we were making it before. Before we were making it intense, that's one depth after another depth. No. It's not so intense. We're talking about two separate depths. But in truth, you cannot explain that is the meaning of Mamaakim. Since these are two opinions, if you say it's the depth of the heart, Mamaakim, or if you're saying Mamaakim is the depth of the well above of Hashem, you must say that when Rabbi Yitzchak says Mamaakim, he's talking about a plural of depth in the person. And when Rab Abba says Mamaakim, he's talking about a plural of depth of the well of above. It's not that each one is saying oimek. Each one is saying Mamaakim to me. The emes in truth is Yeshem Shnei and Yon. In truth, both are to be found. The heart and the depth of above, because in truth, both Rab Abba and Rabbi Yitzchak, each one is saying one matter, and they're not disputing each other. And like we know that many arguments in the Gemara are discussed in the end that really they're not really an argument, but each one is referring to a different thing. And the Rebbe says that we find an example of this, especially when it comes to disputes concerning Rosh Hashanah. Bilkutei Torah, that's brought down in Bilkutei Torah, Machlokes, if a shofar has to be made of a straight horn or has to be made of a curved horn, and according to Chassidus, they're both correct. There's the spiritual idea of the straightness of the horn, and there's a spiritual idea of the curved horn. There are two types of avodas, and both have to be there. Then moving for this understood. Third page on a Maamar, Gam b'negel l'shtei adayos v'pirish Maamaakim sheshayach l'Rosh Hashanah. Also concerning the two opinions in what does Mamaakim mean. If it's going from the depth of a person like Rabbi Yitzchak or the depth of above like Rabbi Abba, that these are connected with Rosh Hashanah, that this capital Shira Milas we begin to say on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, in a similar vein, we can say that this is not a dispute between Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Belamar, Amar Chada Chulu, Shneim Emes. Each one is saying one thing, but they're not excluding the other, and both of them are true. And therefore, so we come back to our initial issue. So if so, it's true that there's the depth of the heart in plural Mamaakim, and it's true that there's the depth of above in the plural of Mamaakim. And in each one of them, there's the idea of from the depth in the plural. Both in the depth of the person, which is what Rabbi Yitzchak calls the depth of the heart, and also in the depth of above, which Rabbi calls the depth of the well. There's both depths, and therefore, we're back to our original question. Since we're reaching so deep, how can we do so only with Kriya, which seems to be a very easy and light level of davening? Since this capital is connected to Rosh Hashanah, like we mentioned before, the main idea of Rosh Hashanah is the idea of Binyan HaMalchus. We've had this a few times. Binyan HaMalchus means that Malchus is different than all other spheres. Malchus came into being just with one point. Malchus Sheba Malchus, sometimes brought on Kesed Sheba Malchus. All the other spheres came in that when Chachma was Netzal, it was made fully formed. From Chachma Sheba Chachma through Malchus Sheba Chachma. In Bina, from Chachma Sheba Bina through Malchus Sheba Bina. Only Malchus came in Nekuda Tachsa Yisoid, only a point, like the new moon that barely has anything to it and then it has to grow. The same thing, Malchus needs to be built up. And it begins the building of Malchus, that we are inserting and embedding in Malchus all the other spheres, Chachma to make Chachma Sheba Malchus, Bina to make Bina Sheba Malchus, and so on. And that, as we'll soon say, is a process over the entire Aseret Tshuva, every day another sphere. How they move, and it's understood, line 11, that Mamaakim is connected with the building of Malchus, because the fact that they're coming together at the same time is not by chance. It must be that this is part of the point of what Rosh Hashanah and Aseret Tshuva is about. That's why we say Shir HaMaylos throughout the entire Aseret Tshuva. Kedisa because the Arizal is brought down in the Arizal's writings, Shabbat Aseret Tshuva. Nasa being a Malchus b'chol proti as Asfira Shabbat. Then the Aseret Tshuva becomes the building of Malchus in all the specific 10 spheres that are in Malchus. Shebachol yom nasa binyan Malchus ba'achas mi'as Asfira Shabbat, because every single day is another sphere of Malchus until Yom Kippur is the final completion of the Binyan HaMalchus, with the final sphere. Move on, for this is understood. Also, the specific details that we spoke about at the beginning of the Maamar of Mamaakim, that it says it's not just a general idea that calling out from the depths is something that has to do with the building of Malchus, with the Binyan HaMalchus, but also the specifics of Mamaakim that we spoke about before. First of all, the term used is not Me'oimkim, but Mamaakim. So Mamak is deeper than Oimek. And then in Mamak itself, it's Shtei Adargas Mamaku, for the fact that it says Mamaakim in the plural, so that means 2 levels in Mamak. All of these details, Shayachim the Binyan Malchus, are connected with the building of Malchus. So now the Rebbe is going to explain how and why that is so. Line 20. The idea behind this is, it's known, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, all matters return to their initial state. Because on the day before Rosh Hashanah, the Chayis returns to the previous year. And the departure, the leaving of the life force and energy and vitality is in all levels of Seder Ishtalshlos. So it's not just, let's say, the highest that needs to be embedded in this world, the level of Mamalakal Alman that leaves to be able to come down a higher highest. But everything that was brought into being, every energy level throughout the Seder Ishtalshlus goes back to its original source and needs to be like drawn down again. Ad gam b'chinas hatainuk, till even the level of Hashem's delight, the highest level of Seder Ishtalshlus, not just Malchus, not just the 10 Spheres, not just Ratzon, but every level returns to its original source and has to be brought down again. Like the Mittler Rebbe explains in the Siddur Dvar Malchus in Kiel Shofar Apikavas Baal Shem Tov Zal, but on the Maamar title to understand Shofar blowing according to the Kavanas of the Baal Shem Tov, Sham Shoch B'Rosh Hashanah Hi Meikra V'Shorsha the Kul that what we're drawing down the Rosh Hashanah is from the primary part and the root of everything. Mebchinas hapnimius va'atzmius, from the innermost level and from the essentialmost level. How come the kivin shetzarich la'oider gam es bechinas hatainug bechinas pnimius hatainug, since we need to awaken by Hashem, also the level of His delight, top of page 4, and the innermost level of delight. V'lachein tzarich liyas hamshachem bechinas shalamayla gam bechinas pnimius hatainug. Therefore, we need to draw down from a level that's even higher than the inner level of the light. You're drawing down the inner level of the light. So you need to go to a level that's higher than that to bring that down again. From there you have to bring down the inner level of the light, the inner level of intellect, the inner level of the emotions, the inner level of Malchus, and the inner level of the world. The emphasis over here on the inner levels is very likely because the fact that the world can exist in the short period of time between when there's the Stalkus HaChayis, which is like Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah afternoon or Rosh Hashanah evening, versus when the Chayis comes back down on by blowing of the shofar. How does the world exist if the whole Chayis goes up? Because only the Pnimis HaChayis that goes up. It's like a person doing work, Chassidus says, without any energy and without any interest. He's just going through the motions. What we are drawing down on Rosh Hashanah is we're drawing down the Pnimius HaChayis. That's why the Rebbe's emphasis over here is the whole time we have to draw down the Pnimius HaTainuk, Pnimius HaMoichim, Pnimius HaMidas, Pnimius HaMalchus in the Pnimius of the Oilmas. So now the Rebbe is going to connect the idea that we said before, that Binyan HaMalchus has to do with the idea of the Mama'kim Karaatich, line 6. V'zeu inyan binyan hamalchus b'Rosh Hashanah v'shaychusay le'inyan Mama'kim. That's the idea of building a Malchus on Rosh Hashanah, and its connection with the idea of from the depths. Shari Yedua, it's known sheshoyrish hamalchus u'bereishad lo yisyada. The root of Malchus is higher than all the other spheres. It's in a level that's called in Kabbalah the head that is not known. The lo yodav lo yisyada ma dahava bereishada in the lashon of Kabbalah. It's not known. He doesn't know, and it's not known what is in this head. V'hainu shu nelam gam b'chinas reisha. It's such a high level that even a level that's called the head of Seder Ishtalshlus, this is completely concealed from it. For example, all the other spheres come from Arich Ampin. Arich Ampin is a lower level of Keser. It still relates to the spheres. Atik, which is often associated with Reishad Lo Yisyada, it's also associated with Atzmus. That's the level that is completely unknown to the spheres, especially Pnimius Atik, Pnimius Atainu. V'zeu klolus ha'inyan the Mama'kim ma'amak davke v'loy oimek. That is the general idea from the depths. And it doesn't say depth in the word oimik, but a greater depth, the word mamak. Shu oimik, la oimik, it's a depth to the depth. Kigam b'chinas the stimin hu nelam, because even in the concealed levels, it is also concealed. Since this hamshacha of this reishad lo yisyada, from the Pnimius level that's beyond Pnimius HaTainuk, is accomplished through avoid of every single Yid on Rosh Hashanah. Lachein tzarich liyis havoid of Pnimius HaPnimius Mamaakim. Since it has to reach so high, it needs to come from our Pnimius, from the level of our depths that we mentioned as the explanation of Rabbi Yitzchak, from the depth of our heart. Like Chazal said, Malchus b'ratzon kibla aleim b'ratzon dafke, that the Siddur says that for his kingship they accept with will. It has to be specifically with will. Through this, we awaken above, there should be a will for Hashem's kingship by us, going from the depth of our being. From this understood the great advantage of the neshamas of Yidin Shemagim. Lepnimius v'atzam maitzel, they reach the inner essence of the emanator. Therefore, through their avodah, they draw down from the essence of the emanator to the level of the light, until it comes down to the worlds, because our level is so high and so elevated.